And now about the guest who was like air defense. This week, Keith Kellogg visited Ukraine. The visit of the special representative of American President Trump was announced as a week-long one. But Kellogg stayed in Kiev for 4 days and became the subject of countless memes on social media. People joke that Kellogg himself was like American air defense for Ukraine, because during his stay, the nights in Kiev were relatively quiet. No long air raid alerts, no bombings, no drone attacks. Even Volodymyr Zelensky made a joke about this in one of his interviews. He admitted that people had advised him to give the American a Ukrainian passport and keep him in Kiev to protect the city from Russian missiles. Yuri Anap, the spokesperson for the Air Force, also commented on the calm in the Ukrainian skies. He noted that, indeed, there were no massive attacks during Chito Kellogg's visit, but it's too early to relax, as Kiev remains a top priority target for the enemy. And this week, specifically on Monday, Trump issued a new ultimatum to Putin. The countdown started precisely from July 14th. Unlike previous warnings from the American president, who usually gave the Russian dictator 2 weeks, this time he set a 50-day deadline for Russia to reach a peace agreement, or a ceasefire against Ukraine. Our TSN international correspondent Yana Slesarchuk has gathered all the facts and is finding out exactly what Trump offered Europe and how he is trying to outplay Putin.
We have collected all of Putin's ultimatums.
In about a week, or perhaps in 2 weeks, or even in 2 to 3 weeks, approximately 2 weeks from now, around 2 weeks.
And we're figuring out how the latest one is different from the others.
We will impose very tough tariffs if there is no peace agreement within 50 days.
What kind of tariffs are these? I'll explain in a minute. Cautious dissatisfaction with the long deadline of Putin's latest ultimatum is spreading across Europe, especially against the backdrop of the drawn-out discussion of the 18th package of European sanctions against the Kremlin.
I'm convinced that the 50 days announced by Trump are too long. September 2nd is too late.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has taken on the mission of deciphering Trump's words. It was after a meeting with him that the American president announced the ultimatum.
In 50 days, he will impose secondary sanctions on countries like India, China, and Brazil. So I strongly urge these 3 specific countries. If you are in charge of them, you should pay close attention, because this could hit you very hard. Please call Putin. Tell him to take peace talks seriously. Otherwise, this will hit you massively.
50 days. That's almost 2 months. The deadline is unpleasant, but not unacceptable, if you don't take into account that this is far from the first deadline Trump has set for Putin this year. So far, Putin has consistently ignored them, seeing time and again that there are no consequences. It started on April 24th after yet another massive Russian attack on Kiev with ballistic missiles and drones. By that time, Trump and Putin had already had several phone conversations. The Americans and the Russians had met in Saudi Arabia. That didn't help, so Trump addresses the Kremlin leader through his social network.
I am dissatisfied with the Russian strikes on Kiev. It was unnecessary and very poorly timed. Vladimir, stop. 5,000 soldiers are dying every week. Let's make a peace deal.
Will you consider additional sanctions against Russia? What will you do if Putin doesn't want to talk?
I'd answer that question in a week. I want to see if we have a deal. Right now, there's no reason to answer, but I won't be happy. I'll say this, something will happen.
Why are you putting more pressure on Russia?
I'm putting a lot of pressure. You can't even imagine how much pressure I'm putting on Russia.
However, Russia still hasn't agreed to a peace deal. A few days later, Trump gives Putin another 2 or 3 weeks to think it over.
Do you trust Putin?
I'll tell you in 2 weeks.
Since then, every 2 or 3 weeks, Putin is given another 2 or 3 weeks. This was on May 16th, during a trip to the Emirates.
I'll tell you, the world is already a much safer place now. And I think that in 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be able to make it a much, much safer place.
This was on May 19.
I'd rather tell you in 2 weeks. For now, I can't say yes or no.
This was on May 28.
I won't tell you that, but we'll find out in about 2 weeks. We'll find out very soon. We'll see if he wants to cooperate or not. And if not, then we'll have to act differently.
The pause dragged on for a month and a half. During this time, Ukraine got used to the fact that after every conversation between Trump and Putin, another massive shelling with civilian casualties was to be expected. And the destruction of residential buildings. The American president is starting to realize, it seems, that Putin doesn't respect him as much as he would like. Even his wife tells him this.
I come home and say to the First Lady, I spoke with Vladimir today. We had a wonderful conversation. And she's like, oh really? Another city just got bombed.
Against the backdrop of the flattering Mark Rutte, who was enthusiastically telling everyone in the Oval Office how talented a negotiator the American president is and how Putin should now be afraid of him, the reaction of the EU's chief diplomat was rather cool.
On the one hand, it's very good that Donald Trump wants to put more pressure on Russia. On the other hand, 50 days is a very long time, because we see that Russia is killing innocent people.
Trump himself, of course, doesn't see it that way.
Why are you giving Putin an extra 50 days to wage war in Ukraine?
I don't think 50 days is very long, and it could even be faster. I don't think 50 days is very long. Those are the kinds of questions Biden should be asked.
This is not my war. Trump has repeated dozens of times since he was elected president of the United States for the second time. And he always adds,
If I were president, this war wouldn't have happened.
But to the usual accusations against his predecessor Biden, a new note has been added, a grudge against Putin. That's how strategic ambiguity works in the hands of the most unpredictable president of modern times. Just a few hours after these words, several newspapers, starting with the Financial Times, reported that in a conversation with Zelensky, Trump directly asked whether he could strike Moscow and St. Petersburg. And Zelensky supposedly replied, "Give us the weapons and we'll hit them." It got to the point where the White House spokesperson had to say, no, Trump did not encourage Kiev to strike Moscow. But this is a signal that the Kremlin will interpret completely differently than how it sounds publicly. By allowing the discussion to go public about whether he did or did not tell Zelensky to strike Moscow, Trump says on camera, no.
Should Zelensky focus more on Moscow or go deeper into Russia?
No, he should not target Moscow.
But first of all, he doesn't say anything about strikes deep inside Russia. Secondly, he doesn't deny that such discussions might have taken place. Trump's relationship with Putin has always been personal. He can't allow himself to be outplayed in public because he already almost sees himself holding the Nobel Peace Prize for stopping that very foreign war. For obvious reasons, Ukrainian military officials do not comment on the quantity, content, or speed of the supplies. William Taylor, former ambassador to Kiev and now an analyst at the Atlantic Council, offers his own version of why the new Patriots could quickly end up in Ukraine.
It seems that what President Trump and the NATO Secretary General were talking about is that European countries have their own Patriots, and these Patriots can be transferred to Ukraine fairly quickly. After that, the Europeans will buy replacements for themselves from American manufacturers. This will help deliver the systems to Ukraine quite quickly.
Because speed is the most important thing here.
I'm Vasil Zarchuk, Hennedy Shula, Victoria Pismena. TSN 1+1.